Hi, I wanted to make this video to talk about vast.ai. It's a service that allows you to access non-commercial GPUs to build machine learning models against. I've been using it to build my own machine learning models, and I find it really fast to fire up a Jupyter Notebook and get going, and it builds the model like really snappy. So it's pretty inexpensive. You can fire up your Jupyter Notebook, run your machine learning model on a decent GPU for a few hours, and it'll only cost you a couple of dollars. So one thing to keep in mind is the machine should be thought of as pretty much ephemeral. So you want to back up your data pretty regularly and get it off there. And you also want to consider the fact that you don't know whose machine it is, where they are. They're just someone who signed up to this service and said, I can rent out my GPU. So security, I would say, is an issue. You don't want to trust it with secret data or, data that you shouldn't be allowing other people access to. So it's great for learning and for using like open source data sets or things where you really don't care if someone actually gets access to your data or your code or anything else you put on there. So I'm going to give you a quick demo of me on vast.io, firing up a machine with a GPU, running my model on Jupyter Notebooks, making any changes, backing those up to Git, and then basically blowing away the machine with the GPU on. So let's take a look. Okay, so here we are in the vast.ai user interface, and we can create an instance from here. You can see I've got some credit there. Pretty easy, just go to billing, add your credit card, add some credit. So we'll click on create an instance, and you can see here there's basically two options you can have. You can have on demand, so you're basically running the machine. It's a little bit more reliable, or you can have interruptible. And that's a little bit cheaper, but it basically means obviously you can be interrupted, someone can take the machine anytime you're using it. I'm generally going for on demand because I don't want to mess about with that too much. I could probably tweak my workflow so that I can be pretty sure that I wouldn't lose anything at any time, but my workflow at the moment is more I work and then I commit something to Git and upload it to Git. And then over here you basically say what kind of machine you want. So you're basically getting like a Docker image running. So you can get a Docker image that is the TensorFlow Docker image or the PyTorch Docker image, or there's a few others here, vast.ai, or you can run your own custom image. And as I use vast.ai more, I probably will go down this custom image route just because I'm sure my setup script is going to get longer and longer, and it would make more sense for me just to pull that down, have everything I want to use in my own Docker image. But obviously that Docker image needs to be publicly available, so you couldn't put anything in that custom Docker image that's going to be a security concern, because vast.ai needs to pull that image down before you've authenticated or anything like that. I'm using PyTorch, so I've got that selected here. It's going to run Jupyter Notebook. As it says here, that's the easiest thing. You can also have Jupyter Lab. I haven't used Jupyter Lab very much. I kind of like Jupyter Notebook just as it is, so that's fine. Or you can run SSH. I've played with that, but I just find it easier just to jump into Jupyter Notebooks right now. If I was moving more of my code into like Python modules, then I'd probably use SSH and run more scripted things. But at the moment, because I'm experimenting and the general machine learning process kind of favors Jupyter Notebooks, but as the code solidifies a little bit more, maybe I'll convert that to code. I'll run SSH, and I can fire up a machine and run the code across that. And you can also pass a startup script. So I'm actually running my startup script in the Jupyter Notebook, but I could potentially just paste it in here and run it here. So yeah, we'll stick with the PyTorch one. And then there's a bunch of options. Generally they get more expensive as you scroll down, and you can see here there's a lot of single instances of GPUs, but you can actually get multiple instances of GPUs. So here there's like 10 GPUs that you could use. So I haven't got to the point where I'm playing with multiple GPUs, but I do intend to do that at some point. There's lots of other information here, what the processor is, what kind of disk you get, the speed of the disk, how much memory you get on the GPU, just the speed of everything basically. And then you've got reliability here. And to simplify it a little bit, what vast.ai have done is created this DL perf score. So I'm just going to go ahead and click rent on this one. And you can see it's pending here. So I'm going to go over here to instances, and you can see my instance here. And I can start it. Before I start it, I'm just going to get my setup ready. So I've got this directory here just for the demo, and I've got a script in here. And so in this script, I basically have all the things I want to run on that machine when I start it up. And the way I do that is on the Jupyter Notebook, I create a bash notebook, and I just paste this in and run it. And then down the bottom here, I have a little section that I just run whenever I need to, just to commit my changes. In order to do this, I need an SSH key. So we can create that just by running the SSH keygen. So I'm going to paste that key into my setup script. So this is one of the things you have to be wary of, is I'm putting a SSH private key in here. And so anyone who runs that machine could potentially have access to this key. And so that's obviously a concern. And then we want to put the public key on Git, because basically I'm going to be using this for talking to Git. So what I'm doing is using GitLab. I never use GitLab, so it's not that much of a risk. So I can paste the public key in there. I can call this vast.ai demo, and I can have it expire. Let's have it expire tomorrow. I've only got one repo on here. It's the repo I'm working on, and the repo isn't that sensitive. So if this SSH key got compromised, I'd be okay. So let's go and start our machine. Oh, it's already running. It's been running for 4 minutes. So let's connect that machine. You can see here straight away we've got Jupyter Notebook. I'll create a bash interface. I'm gonna copy my setup commands, paste these in here. Just gonna move this to a separate. Let's make this a bit bigger. Okay, so I'll just go through this script. Let's call it setup so we can distinguish it. So at the top here, I'm installing just curl and git, because I use both of those. And then I'm making a .ssh directory. I'm putting that private key in there as just the default SSH private key. So Git will pick that up by default. Setting the permissions on that. I'm also making sure it's in the known hosts so that Git doesn't get any prompt. I'm setting my Git credentials. I could also paste in a Git config file. And then I'm checking out the repo. I'm just testing first that it's not already checked out, because I want to run this idempotently. I just want to run this over and over again if I have to. And just adding things like this just to make sure that Git clone isn't going to complain that I've already cloned it. I do a Git pull because, again, I might have already cloned it. I might want to just run this again, and I might have made changes since then. And then this part here you don't need to worry about too much. Essentially, I'm using Poetry in my repo. Jupyter is running in the Python installed in the Docker image, and I'm just doing this to change the Poetry dependencies into requirements.txt file and install them that way. And then I actually removed Poetry because I was hitting some problems, but that's all details you don't need to know about. And then I got here just something, actually I don't need this line, just something to do a git pull, commit my changes, and then git push to the repo. And so yeah, let's go ahead and run this. So that is saying your SSH key is expiring soon. And you can see here it's added it to the known hosts. And it's expiring soon because I set it to expire tomorrow. Let's see how we're going. It's still running. And so it's downloading everything. All my images and everything are in this repo. My images being training data. Okay, now it's installing the Python dependencies. And so black here is basically something I've added to the notebook. It basically does some reformatting, which is pretty handy because Jupyter Notebook is not very good at formatting, and I'm used to working in an IDE where you can just hit a command and it formats your Python code nicely. Okay, so I'm going to run my Jupyter Notebook from the beginning, restart the kernel, run all the cells. And you can see here, first thing I do is run NVIDIA SMI, just so I got some kind of record of like what it is that I'm running on. And you can see memory, I have about 24 gigabytes, and I'm using this command just to output that information, and I've scattered that throughout my playbook just so I can keep track of where the memory is going. I can look at this and say, well, did I really need 23 or 24 gigabytes of memory? If I see I'm only using 10, then I'll probably use a smaller GPU next time. I find this like pretty fast. Each training iteration is taking just over 5 seconds. Validation is taking out just over a second. The model is ResNet 152, so it's a pretty big model. Let's stop this. And let's basically just add something here. Hello. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to commit this. So I did a dummy cell. Cool. And so that's pushed it up to GitLab. If I go to the repo, I've only got one project here. You can see the last commit was this one. Added a dummy cell. And yeah. And so now I've got the changes committed. And if I exported like the trained data, maybe the weights of the model, I could have pushed those up to GitHub as well, or GitLab rather. Generally I use GitHub, so I'm using GitLab because I don't want to put SSH keys that are going to give access to my GitHub, so I'm just using GitLab for that. Another option you could do is just host your own Git somewhere, but yeah, there's lots of services where you can use Git. So now we've been using this for 30 minutes, paying 90 cents an hour. So I'm gonna click here to destroy this. So we can basically calculate how much we spent on this. And so I've spent about 19.5 cents. And maybe I built my model in that time, maybe I didn't. Generally I use it for maybe an hour to 3 hours or something like that. Usually by that point I've figured out a different direction I want to go, so I open the notebook on my local machine, make some changes there, maybe find some new training data images, and then when I'm ready I'll jump back onto the GPU again. So that's basically vast.ai. I have no affiliation with vast.ai at all. I'm a user, I'm just learning machine learning, and I just thought it was really great for building models and iterating and just learning and doing it fast, because these GPUs are pretty snappy. So if you've used vast.ai and you've got some comments, like some better workflows or things that I could improve in my workflow, then yeah, I'd love to hear those. Thanks for watching.